For those of you who are in a similar time zone to us, I want to wish you a happy Sabbath. So yesterday we had a really nice day. Reason we didn't have an evening study is because we had a second baptism and we had um, the ordinance of humility, foot washing, and Last Supper communion. And then we had testimony service, which was really nice. And then we had an offline study for about an hour and a half, which you all missed online. And I've already forgotten the details of anyway. So yes, and my bad memory. Let's open with a word of prayer. Holy God, we thank you. You are so good to us. You don't live in time, yet you look at the past, the present, and the future. In your wisdom and your power, you foresee all eventualities and take into consideration all possibilities. If you didn't do that, we would be without hope. So I'm thankful. In Jesus' name. Amen. We have two presentations left, and some people are getting frustrated. But we have two presentations left. Some people are getting frustrated, especially the ones online, because some of them are saying, you're not answering the question. Or this diet question that we originally began with. So I understand that, but I think it's important for me to try to understand why we do things, why I do things, and if I want to make any changes, that I do that with a clear conscience. And for myself, I have some good reasons. Might sound selfish, but I don't really care about other people's reasons because each of us have to make decisions for ourselves. I don't mean by that statement I'm not willing to share or help people. But these are issues or questions that have concerned me personally, and that's why I want to get right answers for myself. So if we're going to review the diet question for the purpose of either confirming what we're doing is correct or possibly making some changes, then I would rather do that using some kind of logic or methodology. And when you do that, when I do that, I find that I end up coming into conflict with inspiration. When that conflict occurs, I have to make a decision. Either my thoughts are wrong or inspiration is wrong, or there was some other reason, there was some other problem. So, does anybody have any thoughts or questions on this? I want to repeat something that I've said many times, but I think it's important to mention that because several times this week, on camera, off camera, people have been surprised or shocked or upset by things that I have said or the way I've said it. So I can apologize for the way I say things. Sometimes it's quite blunt, rude, but I can't apologize for the methodology. So something that's occurred repeatedly this week is when people have used a Bible verse or a spirit of prophecy quote to defend their position. Not every time, but most of the time, I don't let people do that. And what's the reason I don't let people do that? Natalie, who's doing the audio? Sorry. It's not easy for one person to do it. If people online could see our dynamic, you'd see it's not that straightforward.
You don't like their interpretation of think it means because maybe it can take in a different direction. I don't know. Yeah.
Esther?
way how we argue with Bible and spirit of prophecy often goes against our methodology.
If
Destroys methodology.
you believe that, Esther, why do you keep doing it? Good answer.
Learning.
Yeah, okay.
Die Gründe erklären, warum das so ist und nicht direkt draufgehen.
I need to trust. You don't want to go right away to the goal. Just to lead us that every question is answered till we reach the goal.
Good enough. Thomas?
You apply methodology. Important is that we learn to apply methodology for ourselves. And yeah, basically he said that.
Okay. I like all of those answers. Oh, sorry. But I'm going to focus on what Natalie said, because I disagreed with that. Not all of it, just one part. I think she said something like, I don't agree, or maybe I don't like the way people think. And at breakfast, we were talking, I was speaking to Paula about her career. And she's studying psychology. I think it's the study of the mind, if not in its completeness, at least it has a lot to do with that. Oh, Emma, you want to say something? Are you going to answer the question?
Because I think the way that we use the Bible verse confirms our own bias and doesn't allow us to approach the subject from a different perspective.
All the answers are correct. What I disagreed with, Natalie, was the following. I respect the way you think. But when I say something and someone gives me a Bible verse to argue against what I said, I actually think they don't respect the way I think. Because what they're actually saying is, I always say it in a rude way, I apologize. Are you so dumb, Parminder, that you didn't know, that you never read? Sorry, Sylvie. That the wages of sin is death? payment for sin is death. Or maybe you've forgotten. So let me remind you. And I hadn't forgotten, and I'd read it a few times. So, as I said before, we can't have these discussions if you already haven't read inspiration. If you haven't read and you haven't thought about the introduction of sin into heaven, the different response to Lucifer and Eve. And the different response between Eve and Adam. So I actually respect the way people think. So I just want to say that. And I also want to say, I try to do my best not to be misunderstood. And sometimes people struggle with that. Because people think in a certain way, which is their way. It's quite common. And when I ask the same question over and over again, they get frustrated. So yesterday evening, we had a really nice study, which I think was part 2 of a study that we had done yesterday lunchtime. So this was our personal Sabbath study, our Sabbath school. And that was on the 9th of August. And what was the study about? The nature of humans. And someone had asked me about a past, I'm going to call it recent. So that should say studies, I won't erase it. And the past study, let's call it not past. There was an old study and a recent study. And the old study was what? Higher and lower nature and Monica? Yes. The power of the will. Date? 2017. The recent study was what? Fast brain, slow brain. And that was when? And Oh, sorry. And the question that was being asked was what? What's the essence of the question? Translate?
Which one of those rule?
So the question was, which one is correct? We have two contradictory or apparently contradictory models. First one was spirit of prophecy. And the second one was science. I'm going to put God and I'm going to put godless. Atheistic. And so we went through this and there were two things that stood out for me. One of them was the difficulty that people had in dealing with two apparent models that contradict one another. So in the Bible, it says the people preferred the old wine. Because the new one tastes a bit funny. So that's one problem. Happens a lot. And it's related to the point I made a moment ago when people quote inspiration. So I asked the question, what happened in Eden? And someone quotes the story verbatim. So then there's another problem. We get into a discussion. I'm not an expert on grammar, but I think logic is important. And people, when they get into discussions, I think they forget methodology. We had a discussion a couple of days ago. Let's see if I can point to it. There it is. God. And what do you say about God? What's that marker there? Who remembers? If you remember, just put your hand up. This was Peter's question, if you like.
God is. Oh,
Let's go with Peter.
deconstruct God's character or characteristics.
That's only half the answer. We need to fill in the bit at the beginning. I thought it was important enough to put it on the board because I knew it would come up again, and it did yesterday. Off screen.
What was at the
God's law, or someone did. So we address that. If we say God's law, then we have logical problems. But we did say not God's law with respect to ownership, but we spoke about God and the relationship with law. And I think the words there, which was what? Anybody? Can they remember?
His law?
So on the board. It's not about his law, because that we've said is wrong. We can't do God's law. It's right here.
Is the law.
It begins by saying God is subject to law. Peter said that's wrong because God is law. And then I said what Peter just said now. If you don't deconstruct God's character, personality, elements, it's very difficult to analyze and come to some understanding of God. Humans do this all the time. They chop things up into pieces. Are we okay with that? Psalm 85:10. Maybe it's not the perfect verse, but it's the verse that we used. That spoke about God, singular. And then it spoke about elements of God. So we don't kiss ourselves. We kiss other things, don't we? But what does the verse say? Not the whole verse. What does the verse say in reference to what I've just said? The two words. Niska?
love and grace,
Have what?
Majučo, each other.
Love and grace kissed each other. We can see that. God is love, and grace is God. Jesus was full of what? Grace. Good. So God kisses God. Do we get the point I'm trying to make? Okay, so I'm not bothered about that. It wasn't revision. Back to the question on the digital board. People struggle when we have new understanding of something and it appears to contradict the old. That's point one. So in our conversation yesterday, we were speaking about the fast brain and the slow brain. Several people fell into this trap or ditch. Who remembers what they said? Even if it's not the whole sentence. Thomas? This is not the whole study. This is a problem that I've focused on.
Is the automatic one?
Don't translate. This is the last bit I didn't hear. Okay. That's not the problem. Natalie? You had that? Oh. Monica?
Was that we kept saying, or I kept saying that we use the brain.
Sabina?
Doubting is sin.
So, problem that I had, someone said you use the brain. And you can put any pronoun you want to when it says you. I, we, they, me, anything, she, him. And then you can use nouns, like someone's actual name. And I kept on asking the question, who is the you? And it took people a long time to understand what that was. And this relates back to my point earlier. When I do that, people say, Parminder must be dumb. He doesn't understand sentence structure. So I don't know if everybody online can see this. And not everybody in our group was at that study. But most people who understand even a teeny bit about the human body will stop there for a second. Someone told me yesterday that this person was what? No. Full of sin. And I asked, which bit? So the toes must be full of sin. And then they said, okay, you're not clever. So I'll use a better word for you. This person's imperfect. And I said, I know I'm not good at English, but just tell me which bits are imperfect now. These are repeating patterns of how each of us handles methodology. I'm not saying you shouldn't tell me off. You should. I don't mind being called dumb. It's okay. The problem with this, you use the brain, is this idea that we have to deconstruct the human. Which is what happened right in that statement. So people say, you deconstruct God, we deconstruct humans. And my answer is yes, but do it properly. That's the problem. Doing it properly. Can we see what the problem is here? You use the brain. The sentence was actually fast. I didn't put it there because it doesn't matter. So I asked, who are you? And the person thought I was attacking them. And they said, not me, humans in general. And as we went through this, the struggle was to understand what? What's the problem with this sentence? Jutta, do you want to have a go? No? Monica, you want to have a go?
I think the sentence says that you is only the fast brain. Only a part of a human.
Okay. Rodolfo, you wasn't there at that study, I don't think. Can you see what the problem is?
Ja, oder wie? Oder- Ach so, auch ein Problem mit dem Satz.
Someone had the hand up? Thomas?
Ich war bei dem Studium nicht dabei, aber ich verstehe es doch, dass das You automatisch negativ für sich selbst auf sich selbst bezieht und das ist nicht richtig. Das heißt ja nicht nur.
I was not part of the study, but what I see could be a problem is that the you becomes negative and you negatively apply it to yourself.
Before you carry on, that's what the person thought. They thought it was an attack upon them, that they were negative. They thought the same thing.
Das geht aber nicht. Es geht zum Verstehen, was das jetzt ich nicht richtig verstehe, um mit dem Schnellgehen zu lernen, aus dem Richtigen das umzusetzen für mich selbst. Und das hat nichts mit
It won't translate.
dass man versteht, dass es nicht negativ gemeint ist, sondern dass es für mich positiv ist, mit dem Schnellgehirn Dinge zu lernen. Da geht es nicht um Angriff, sondern um
not an attack, it's help, and it's not negative, it is actually positive that I can learn with the fast brain.
Okay. I'm going to guess that Monica wants to correct what she said. Because what she said wasn't correct.
I cannot use the fast brain. Reacts unconsciously. Not educated or train it.
Joachim.
You doesn't talk about my whole me or the whole body.
Okay. So I asked the question, who or where are you? And that was my first step in trying to deconstruct this. And that didn't quite work. So I think I kind of gave the answer. When we say you, we actually mean the brain. You might call it mind, consciousness, soul, heart. So it's the brain that controls the human being. So this ends up being a form of a tautology. A redundant repeat. That's a tautology. So you can't use your brain. Your brain can use your mouth, but there's no part of your body that can use the brain. And I am aware that that is a simplistic model of a human. I am familiar with the parasympathetic systems that we have. All good? Yep. Okay, so I only use it as an example. As another issue about methodology. How difficult it is to come out of our very narrow or tunneled way of viewing things, tunnel vision, if I can say. This was not a personal attack on anybody. It was trying to show people that you can't use your brain. And when you were at school, probably your parents, because they're rude, and you did something silly, what would the adult say? Yes. Can't you use your brain? And you, as a child, you should have said what? Mum, of course I can't. You need to study 101 psychology. I can't use my brain. That might be a silly example. But when those ideas get lodged in your being at a very early age, it molds and shapes your thinking in a way you cannot imagine how damaging it is. So when we speak about fast brain, slow brain, like our parents and teachers, what do we want to do? What did they tell us to do? Sentence is there. Use your brain. Or in our discussion, we're saying what? Someone said negative. Don't use, don't use your fast brain. You learn that from your parents or your teachers. Until someone tells you decades afterwards what is so obvious. You can't use your brain uses you. I want to remind us. Sorry, I didn't say what. Sorry? You got your mic? How's it work?
You said your brain uses you.
Yes.
That also
Yes.
very bad.
Yeah. So I was going to add what the you was. They're merciless here. They have no mercy. This is what they're complaining is. Your brain uses you. And they said, you can't do that. It's illegal. And that was a run-on sentence. You heard it's like she jumped in before I finished. Okay. Oh, okay. What I was going to do, well, I was rudely interrupted. In the old study, we address this with the model of the mouth. That's meant to be lips. Got that from Elizabeth. And she's not here. So in that study, if you remember, the problem isn't the mouth or the tongue. Are we okay with that, if you remember? And what's the problem with that statement? With what I just said. I said the issue is not the tongue or the mouth. What's the problem with that? Come on, we've got clever people here. Deniska, what's the problem? Bible. Okay.
Mouth is only the tool, the brain is directing. Art.
We've had 3 warnings of unstable internet, just letting you know. Okay, James 3:8. Who do you want to believe? Joachim or the Bible? It's your choice. Joachim, who do you want to believe? Yourself or the Bible?
Der Aussage. Zu der Aussage eben. Wem glaube ich mehr, mir oder der Bibel? Zu dieser Aussage eben. Auch für den Allgemeinen.
Nicht zu dieser Aussage, zu diesem Text.
We didn't read the verse yet.
Oh, okay. Okay, it contradicts what you said.
It's the same.
What? Emma, was that the same? Was it 100% different? 180 degrees different? Someone summarize what Joachim said and what the verse says. Who will do that? Who's doing it? Monica.
Joachim said that it's the not the mouse fault, it's the brain's fault.
Good.
Says that it's the mouse fault. You cannot limit it.
So the Bible blames, we'll just say the mouth. And Joachim blamed the brain. Completely different models. And these little thoughts, these little ideas that we pick up from adults, And now from inspiration, mold the way we think. And it's very difficult to come out of that. So I'm going to move on a little bit. A recurring theme. It's similar to what we've already discussed. I'm going to ask two questions. One L or two? How powerful is God? Second question. When I ask, like, what's the second question? I'm trying to guide you into a coherent, a consistent way of thinking. Not into my way of thinking. Who's going to answer? This doesn't... No, my question is, um, one at each one. Question one, question two. How powerful is God?
God is as powerful as the human allows them to be.
I like that answer. Emma? Sorry, Tamina?
God is as powerful as human.
Is that the same answer? Besides the words that you use, what's the difference?
Didn't add the part where you can allow how powerful God is.
You didn't say the word, but if we went further along, wouldn't you have to say that word? Anybody want to say something different? Yeah, go ahead.
Have free will. Both have free will.
Oh, sorry. Both have free will. Good. Okay. So answer one, as powerful as the human. So that's what you both said? Does anybody want to add something? Because if you go to inspiration, it's contradictory to that.
It's almighty.
Yes, that's what the scripture will say. God is almighty. Number 2. Answer. How powerful is the human? Paula? You have to wait.
As powerful as we can cooperate with God, it would be somehow like the opposite. So we are more powerful than we think we are. In a way, we can say we are as powerful as God.
You didn't say that. You said something else. We're as powerful as God. And God's as powerful as you. And that is a tautology. Emma?
As powerful as the human allows God to work in their life.
What's the difference between what Paula said and what Emma said? Zero. She said the same thing. Peter? I have to do this because people don't put their hands up. The answers are too long.
It seems like the human has the decisive power. Because the human decides if God can work or not.
I don't know why everybody feels the desire to couple these two questions together. What should you do first? Deconstruct, separate. All the answers are combining straight away. We've answered number 1. Number 2, Thomas.
I think I also wanted to combine. Okay.
Natalie? Radka? Monica? Yeah. Carol?
Human is many times weaker than God.
There we go. I took the God bit out. Humans are weak. And therefore, Deniska, what is God? Which one? Natalie explained why she's wrong. Choose from the board.
Podľa tabule.
The logic on the board.
Mm.
Powerful.
I just think if humans are weak,
Just use the logic on the board. Humans.
then God has to be weak.
Thomas?
Weak because it's limited by people.
So I've got weak here. This is bad grammar. So what is weak? Human. So, sorry. So the word weak becomes a substitute or a synonym for human. I know weak is not a synonym of human grammatically. I understand that. If weakness is human, I can go back to the answer number 1 and get rid of that word human and put what word in, Deniska?
Že je tak mocný ako človek, potom bola tu povedať, že slabý rovná sa človek. Je slabý ako je taký mocný ako slabý.
But people online, they're working it out.
That doesn't make it as powerful as
No.
She says as powerful as weak, that doesn't make sense.
It's beautiful. God is as powerful as the human. If you say the sentence, the grammar doesn't make sense, I know that. But Natalie said the logic makes sense. I can write a nice sentence if you want. God is weak because God is as powerful as weak human beings. Which means if humans are weak, that word is the same as that one. You just replace human with weak in here. God is as powerful as the weak, which means God is weak. Are we okay with that? Most people are not. If we're okay with that, I didn't understand what Paula said. No, I mean, I disagreed with what she said. I understood her. Do you agree with all of that, Paula? Makes sense? Okay. So we've got 2 people. Paula, 2 people. Name them.
All the new
Italiano. Dalla Paola, nuova Paola.
Sorry, I made a mistake. So the old you, how much did you understand about psychology?
I did not understand too much.
You were limited in your understanding.
I only studied spirit of prophecy.
So you spoke to people about psychology. You practiced it because you have a family. And you were using models, ideas that were immature or wrong, and you were doing the best you could. And then the new prophet Paula, having done a degree, has better relationships, understands how the brain works better because of the training. So this actually wasn't Paula. Who was this? Ellen White. And who's the new one? We'll say that it's Elder Tess. She's our favorite. So, do we agree with that? See, we might agree with that now or today, but no one else agrees with that. Why don't they agree? How do they view Ellen White? Wrong question, because you have to answer question one first, which is what? How do you view God? And their answer is God is powerful. And what will God do with respect to the human? Like Greek mythology, the humans are puppets, or some people call marionettes, and they just do what they're told, especially when they're prophets. So what kind of knowledge does Ellen White have about the subject of psychology? Who has most? God, Ellen White, or Paula? Tess hasn't done any studies on psychology. I don't think she has. So let's put this in order. We'll call it skill, power, knowledge, whatever it is. Who's the cleverest of them all? Somebody help. Go. Now. Good. And the problem with this is you'll say, well, that's obvious now, but I don't think you believe it. I don't think you really believe that. Perhaps in this subject, you might say, but in a different subject, you'd say no. What subject was this? I'll just call it the brain. It's psychology. Did someone have their hand up? You have your hand up, Thomas? No? Okay. What's our subject? Good. We'll call it the body. Yeah. So we'll call it the body, but it's diet. We put it bigger. Can you see the problem now? We'll put someone else. I don't know how much Paula knows or studies about diet. We did this again. You begin to see the problem. Are we okay with that? I don't need to write anything out. What's the real problem? Are you familiar with the term elephant in the room? Yes or no? She's saying no. Don't know what that means? The real problem. That's what elephant in the room means. What's the real problem? We can go back to this first one or the diet one. Brain or diet, I don't mind which one. Joachim. Time? Nope, not time.
Science now is more than
Science now knows more than Ellen White.
So I hope everybody heard and absorbed that answer. It's close, but it's not the problem. It's very close. There's you, Monica. And there is what? You said? And there is? What's the problem? Thomas, you had your hand up before, or?
Že nejlepší podľa metodológie, keby berieme len Whiteovú povahy.
We wouldn't follow methodology if we only take Ellen White.
Text.
A jej text myslíš? Áno. Then we wouldn't consider all the texts that we have now today.
Yes. But that's not the problem. It's here. Anybody want to guess? Paula? No.
So if we say that we know more or science know more, like we reject Ellen White and we reject God, like she has more authority. We think so. That's the problem. We don't like the idea of saying that not is not okay what she said, because we think she was inspired. Like we equal Ellen White with God.
So that's the correct answer, Emma.
I think it's the same. Let's say it differently.
Yeah,
If we say that Monica knows more than Ellen White, then we say science knows more than God.
Our problem is, and thus saith the Lord, or you can say it a different way. God told me in a dream or a vision. That's the problem. And you have to work out for yourself what you will do with that. How you will wrestle with this. If you go through all these steps that we began here, you follow through these steps, this first section between the two lines, nobody would agree with you. Then you come to this other section, the two people. That point in and of itself is an introduction to the next section. So if we did this as one, people won't agree with that. And if you come to the next section, people don't agree with that. So you're entering into a territory that people don't agree with you. There is no religious body that would accept this. None. I don't know how you view this other thing, but one association would agree with you. Who? And so the tension that this movement has had for several years now, I'll say this in a funny way, living in an atheistic body and having a religious brain. I say that as a joke. But it's the tension of having these atheistic explanations maybe you don't like that word. We'll call it humanistic. If you don't like that, mechanistic. I spell mechanistic. That's what S. Just tell me the next word. Okay. Mechanistic. They're all facets of the same thing. And yet, we all say we're hardcore religionists. And I think this is the problem that we stumble over continually. If you can see all of this, hopefully you can see this as we closed. I'm not going to repeat it, but can anybody not see this problem? World. So I said we've got a religious brain. Doesn't have a head. And we'll use a nicer word, a secular body. So that's artwork is just a graphic representation of what we've discussed. So you have a memory hook. If this is the case, hopefully you can see this problem. We're not fit for this world or the world to come. So that might not be technically correct. We'll do a line. What is this world? This world? Left or right? Left, because it's this world. This, that. What's the world? Someone said? Not church. Not. I hope you didn't say Earth. Church and world. We like to use other phrases. Ellen White says, first, the church, then, are we all together? Which world are we in? Which world are we in? Sorry? It's not a trick. We've got. That's your choices. Which world are we in? Church? Yeah. Someone says heaven, but you only got these choices. We're in the world? One person says we're in the world. Two people. What's this way, Mark? Which world are you in? Put your hands up for church. Put your hands up if you're in the world. So Raquel believes we're in the Sunday law at the moment. And the rest of you don't. Are we allowed to go over time?
We are preparing for.
Then you're on the left.
You know, when a waymark is there, for the waymark is
No one can hear you. So sorry. No one can hear. We're either before the waymark, at the waymark, or after the waymark. So, has everybody watched Elder Terry's presentations? If you haven't, you're very naughty. Bad, naughty, bad. If you have, you're saying you disagree with her. And you have to have a very good reason to disagree with Elder Terry. Because like Paula, back here, she's very clever. Don't want to say any more? Separate to that, we have a problem, not about that. This section, the atheist bit. Church, world, other terms. Good. Levites, Nethinims. Okay. What is our modeling? What is our modeling? Shout. I marked it on the board. Atheistic. And the Levites say, we're religious. You talk rubbish. We say, okay, then. We'll go to our friends, the Nethinims, and they say, you're too what? You're too religious for our liking. So no public evangelism. Not because you're not allowed to, but because you're weird. You have a methodology, we'll call it scientific. And yet you all claim to have faith. And where do you see that? On the board. It's right here. So we're back 200 years or thereabouts. So either he was preaching to dumb people or he wasn't, or he deceived them. Because the combination of science and faith does not work. Why doesn't it work? We explained. Ellen White said, God told me. And you say, Emma, what do you say to Ellen White? Did you? Emma said, God told me. In a dream or a vision? Give it the. She's go.
You say science told me.
Stay there. So you lied. She said God told me.
The first answer.
Then she said science told me. So the first one was a lie. It's the first lie we've caught you on. It's on public record. Who believes science is God and God is science? I don't. Paula doesn't. God says you can't eat pigs. Forget that. God says you can't eat camels. And science says, what's the problem? And we say, science is dumb. That's where you will always go to. And if you say, well, we won't know until we get to heaven and God explains, you are not doing what? Following proper methodology. We need to close. We've covered a fair bit of territory today. There's an answer about diet and coffee. People seem concerned about coffee. Let's pray. As we're kneeling, I promise to answer the coffee question this evening. We won't use any arguments. We'll just answer the coffee question. Holy God, we thank you as we entered into this sanctuary today on your holy Sabbath. People who are not here would not have seen that we took our shoes off. Because even though it doesn't appear so, we realized that we were walking on holy ground. I trust you. I thank you that you allow me, those in this room, to express themselves openly and honestly before your throne. Others would kill their subjects for such blasphemous talk. But not you. That's why I choose to serve you than anyone else. In Jesus' name, amen. We have one more presentation, the last one for our camp. And it's later this evening. In around 8.5 hours, if that helps anybody. God bless.